Yeah, John does not do one.
Okay. Good afternoon, and welcome to Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago. I am Susan Hayes Gordon, and I have the privilege of serving as Senior Vice President and Chief External Affairs Officer here at Lurie. And we're so grateful that you're here today, and we are here to discuss really important public safety issue. At Lurie Children's, our number one job is to ensure kids' optimal health. And certainly we do this by providing world-class clinical care and cutting-edge research. But we also need to help kids be healthy by protecting them from unintentional injuries and fatalities. So we are so honored to welcome Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, who represents the 9th Congressional District of Illinois. We at Lurie Children's have the privilege of serving many children from her district. Last year, 51,000 patient encounters. That's inpatient stays and outpatient visits for just in her district. Congresswoman Schakowsky is an extraordinary leader on behalf of our nation's children, as evidenced by her tremendous leadership on working to advance child passenger protections. As a Level 1 pediatric trauma center, we provide life-saving care to children involved in car accidents. We know that these child safety protections that Representative Schakowsky will speak about will save countless lives. In addition to her leadership on child safety, I also want to thank Representative Schakowsky for her other vital work on children's health. She is a tireless champion for the Medicaid program, the single largest insurer of children in the nation. And earlier this year, she co-sponsored and voted for and helped to pass in the House 2 important common sense violence prevention bills to make our communities safer for children and families: the Bipartisan Background Checks Act of 2021 and the Enhanced Background Checks Act of 2021. And especially near and dear to Lurie Children's heart, Congresswoman Schakowsky successfully included for the nation's children's hospitals $200 million in additional funding for them to teach the pediatricians of the future and specialists in the Build Back Better Act. This funding is vital. We cannot thank her enough for championing this critically important program for our nation's children's hospitals. And we are so grateful for her outstanding leadership on behalf of child health and for all she does in Washington. And so it is my great honor to introduce Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Lurie Children's Hospital, so much for hosting us, as you do often, with our child toy safety press conferences that we do and all the work that you do for children. I am so proud to be here today to announce the passage of life-saving legislation. I chair in the Energy and Commerce Committee, the subcommittee on consumer protection and commerce. And what could be more important when you talk about consumer protection than auto safety? And I want to, from the get-go, just to say thank you so much to all the advocates and the parents who have stood up and helped us so much, as well as the providers who take care of the victims of these terrible accidents. I will begin, and then I'll introduce our other very important speakers today. So our nation is suffering from an auto safety crisis that requires swift and decisive federal action, and finally, we're getting there. In Illinois, we have assigned here 1,101, maybe that's even more as of today, who knows. Lives have been lost on our roads thus far, just this year alone. And that is 52 more fatalities than this time last year. And we're seeing that all over the nation, that fatalities on the highway are going up. But relief is finally in sight. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act which was signed into law by President Biden last week, marks a historic improvement to our vehicle safety. It will help prevent the tens of thousands of deaths and the millions of injuries and the hundreds of billions of dollars in cost to society tied together with auto crashes. The historic life-saving auto safety package is going to do the following things. It will curb the epidemic of hot car deaths that have claimed the lives of nearly 1,000 babies and toddlers since 1990. It will prevent drunk and impaired driving, which accounts for 27% of fatalities on Illinois roads in 2019. It will prevent the collapse of seats during crashes. We're talking about the seats in cars right now, protecting children from injury and death. What happens is that those seat backs collapse and crush children. It will require all new cars to have critical passive safety assistance systems like auto emergency braking lanes, lane departure warnings, lane keeping assistance, and forward collision warnings. Let me say that first again. It will, first of all, and most importantly, I think it will have critical safety assistance systems like automatic emergency braking. This will be in all new cars that are produced. It will prevent carbon monoxide poisoning from keyless ignition vehicles, and it will finally give consumers the confidence in safety of their cars by updating the five-star rating system. So today you're going to hear from people who advocated and continue for these historic changes. You'll also hear from families who have suffered terrible tragedies as a result of this auto safety crisis. And I'd like to especially thank the families for being here today. It takes a lot of courage to keep repeating these horrific stories. They are here because to make sure that other families don't have to suffer the same things that they have suffered. So their stories highlight how urgent it is that the auto safety provisions in this law become implemented swiftly. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Michelle L. Macy, who is an attending physician in the emergency medicine with Lurie Children's Hospital, and she will introduce our next. No, Dr. Macy, you are next. Okay.
Thank you, Representative Schakowsky. It was July of 2019 when you brought many of us together to do a demonstration at a fire station showing how rapidly a vehicle can heat up, and also to hear stories of families who had experienced the tragic loss of an infant in the back seat. I would have never guessed at that point that we'd be here today with legislation that's going to make that situation rare and use vehicle technology and the power that the automotive industry has to engineer better solutions to prevent these tragedies. There are so many other aspects of this Infrastructure Act that are going to be life-changing for so many people, and they're going to be really impactful for those of us in emergency departments who provide care to those who have been involved in crashes. The automatic braking systems, the aspects of the vehicle that help with driver attention and prevent distracted driving, prevent people from being able to be behind the wheel, drink driving and impaired from other causes, are really crucial to reduce the persistent pattern of crash fatalities that we see in this country. It's been 2 decades since we've seen a downtrend that's really making a difference in terms of crash fatalities, and the legislation that's been passed is going to make a difference again in those numbers. In the last 2 years since the pandemic, we have seen an alarming rise for the first time in decades in the number of people who are dying in crashes, who are dying because a vehicle collides into them when they're walking or biking. And the provisions in this bill are going to ensure that standard on vehicles, we have safer headlights, we have those automatic braking systems, those lane guidance systems, and there are also going to be improvements to the front end of the vehicle so that there is a safer situation if a pedestrian or bicyclist is hit, and warning systems to prevent that collision from happening in the first place. I really look forward to being in the trauma bay less, taking care of families who've been impacted by crashes, and I want to thank the Congresswoman and all those who have been important in passing this vital legislation. I'm going to hand things back over to you to introduce the rest of our important speakers today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Macy. Yes, I remember your being with us when we were talking about hot cars. And now it is absolutely my honor and pleasure to introduce Alex Ott, who is the president of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And you will then introduce our next speaker. Thank you.
So I must say, for a girl who has spent a considerable amount of their life in children's hospitals, it is a little weird to be back. But I also have to say that the first time I met Sheila Schakowsky, I was telling my story at a press conference in D.C. You did not know my story at the time, and I did not know that you had done so many incredible things for children's hospitals across our country. And so despite that my level 1 trauma center was in Lexington, Kentucky, I have no doubt that things that you have done over your career had a hand in saving my life 11 years ago, so thank you. I am honored to be here today to celebrate the life-saving provisions included in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. As National President of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, I represent the 1 million victims MAD has served since our founding in 1980. MAD is above all else an organization that serves victims of drunk and drug driving. We are available 24 hours a day to help victims and survivors learn to live and heal after experiencing the unthinkable. We help them pick up the pieces when they struggle to pull themselves out of bed every day. We sit with them in courtrooms, we grieve with them, and we hope for a day when there are no more lives tragically cut short or irreversibly changed by someone else's choice to drive impaired. Chair Schakowsky, you have given us reason to not only hope, but believe. Your leadership has led us to this monumental moment in MAD's history, truly the beginning of the end of drunk driving. Because of your leadership, we know that in the near future, technology will step in when people make the wrong choice. Drunk driving is the leading killer on America's roads, killing 10,000 people every year and injuring 300,000 more. Behind every one of these statistics are families whose lives have been shattered by someone else's choice. And it is a choice, not an accident and not a mistake, to drive impaired. As a survivor of someone else's choice to drink and operate a boat 11 years ago, I am devastated that families and entire communities continue to suffer the consequences of someone's choice to drink and drive. When I first came to MAD, I knew that I wanted to be the last little girl this would ever happen to. I know 11 years later that I wasn't. But because of the leadership and support of Chair Schakowsky and so many others, I know that we will see a day when there is a last little girl and when there are no more victims of drunk driving. 9 years after my crash, 5 members of the Abbas family from Michigan were killed by a wrong-way driver on their way home from a family vacation in Florida. On that awful night in January 2019, Rima and Isam Abbas and their 3 children, Ali, Isabella, and Giselle, were killed in my hometown of Lexington, Kentucky. Chair Schakowsky, it was in their honor and under your leadership that the House passed legislation to start the rulemaking for drunk driving prevention technology in all new cars. Thank you. We know it wasn't easy, and we are forever grateful. I'd like to ask you to join me back up here, please.
Oh, wow.
Chair Schakowsky, we are here today because of you and in honor of victims and volunteers from across the country. Without your persistent leadership in Congress, we would not have a new law that will ultimately save more than 9,400 lives every year and countless lifelong injuries like mine. No other law in MAD's history has had the potential to truly end drunk driving forever. This is it, and you're a true MAD hero and one of my heroes. Thank you. We know that the rulemaking brings about new challenges, and we will work tirelessly to support this undertaking in absolutely any way that we can. But today, we want to celebrate you, and we thank you so much for your commitment to saving lives and preventing injuries on America's roads with a MAD Legislative Hero Award.
Oh, should I take it out?
Yes.
Can I take it out?
We just want you to keep the box so you can take it home. Thank you so much.
And then Alex, thank you so much. You're such a tremendous leader for Mothers Against Drunk Driving and the work that you've done and the organization has done. And this award means so incredibly much to me. And on behalf of all the families, the victims, and the leaders, and the people who advocate for us, especially you, thank you so very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chair Schakowsky. And now I'd like to introduce Sheila Lockwood. She lost her son, Austin, who was about my age, and she is from this area, so I would like her to have an opportunity to speak to all of you.
I'm honored to join everyone here today to personally thank you, Congresswoman Schakowsky, for your incredible efforts.
Just move this down a little bit. Get right in. Okay.
For your incredible efforts that resulted in passage of many life-saving provisions in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that will prevent senseless tragedies and save many, many lives. Throughout the legislative process, I worried the bill would be derailed by the pressures and distractions swirling in Congress. But your skilled leadership and dedication to ending drunk driving ensured the robust auto safety provisions in the bill survived the twists and turns of the legislative process. This was new to me, but I realized this is what you do, and you do so well. So thank you from the bottom of the hearts from everyone of the MAD family. As we stand here today at Lurie's Children's Hospital, just days before Thanksgiving, I'm reminded how fragile life can be. The institution is dedicated to helping children and families enjoy healthy lives. And this is exactly what the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act will do. The new law marks the beginning of the end of drunk driving in America because it requires drunk driving prevention technologies to be standard equipment on all new cars in 2027. This will ultimately prevent more than 9,400 deaths every year. No technology on earth can bring back my son, Austin. It's too late for that. Austin was killed on June 10th, 2018. He was 23 years old at the time. He was born in 1995 on May 26th, which also happens to be Congresswoman Schakowsky's birthday. He was a passenger in a vehicle that was driven by someone whose blood alcohol level was way above the legal limit. As that man sped along a narrow road at more than 70 miles per hour, he slammed into a tree, killing my son Austin immediately. My Austin won't be here with me this Thanksgiving. I know that my loss and grief are shared by far too many other families in Illinois and around the nation, because hundreds of our Illinois neighbors and more than 10,000 people nationwide each year perish to drunk driving crashes. In fact, in 2019, more than a quarter of the deaths on Illinois roads involved alcohol impairment. Today, I am truly thankful for this new law. Will save many thousands of precious lives in the future. Families will be kept whole, circle of friends will remain intact. Scars and grief will be prevented. As a token of our thank you, Congresswoman Schakowsky, we have a W flag here for you that you can fly to celebrate your traffic safety win. May you fly it with the same enthusiasm as the Cubs fly their flag at Wrigley Field. Every time you do fly this, please remember that I and many other mothers will be eternally grateful for the win that you achieved and in making this life-saving infrastructure bill, the law of our land. And I have one request from all of us at MAD. Please keep the pressure on NHTSA to make sure that they get the job done on the drunk driving technology standard as soon as possible. Thank you.
Beautiful. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony. Yes, we shared a birthday. And thank you for the flag. I will fly it with pride. I also want to just mention that the rulemaking and making these things come to pass now that legislation is done is going to be equally a requirement of advocacy. And so we don't want to wait years and years for this to happen. So we're going off to continue the fight. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Abe Scar, who is the director of Illinois PIRG. And thank you for all the other things we do for kids together. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Abe Scar. I'm the director of Illinois PIRG. Illinois PIRG is an advocate for the public interest. We stand up for a safer, healthier world in which we're all freer to pursue our own well-being and the common good. I want to thank Congresswoman Schakowsky for her leadership on this and so many other important consumer issues. As she referenced, we're often here right before Thanksgiving for our annual Toy Safety Press Conference, which we did earlier this year. And it's great to have you every year at that. And again, thank you for all your work on consumer protection issues. I also want to thank the amazing advocates who are with us and the families for sharing their stories. It's because of your advocacy that we're here today celebrating a success. In order to solve social problems, we need leaders who don't always agree to come across their differences and find common ground on solutions. And that's the spirit of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which will make for a safer, cleaner, healthier America. As we work for safe mobility options for all Americans, and I'm pleased that the infrastructure bill includes the largest ever investment in public transportation, we know that the personal car is a fact of life for many to get to work or school or fulfill family obligations. And there's no reason that we should accept something that's so integral to our daily lives, causing so many injuries and deaths every year. As we've heard, over 1,000 Illinoisans have died this year from accidents on the road, and that's up from last year, and many more have faced injury or death from preventable problems that this bill addresses. So there's more work to be done. We just heard about how we're going to have to work on rulemaking, and after that, I'm sure there's more progress we can make. But our roads and cars are safer, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure bill and to the leadership of Congresswoman Schakowsky. So thank you.
Thank you. You know, Abe used a really important word, and that's called preventable. So many of these deaths, and that's really the purpose of this legislation, are preventable. And that's just important to keep in mind, that this is not just a fact of life. This is something we can really do something about. So now it is my honor and with gratitude that I introduce Kathy Chase, who is the president of Advocates for Highway Safety, someone who has been just side by side with me, along with Alex, to get this legislation to pass at last. Thank you.
I'm tall like Alex. Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Chase. I'm the president of Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. For those of you unfamiliar with Advocates, we're a coalition of public health, safety, law enforcement, and consumer organizations, and some of the leading property casualty insurance companies. On behalf of our board of directors and our staff, I want to thank Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky for the invitation to be a part of this wonderful event to celebrate the safety victories in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act with some of our nation's public health leaders and heroes. Progress on vehicle and traffic safety issues require persistence, patience, and passion. Congresswoman Schakowsky embodies these traits. As the chair of the House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Consumer Protection and Commerce, she shepherded multiple successes in the infrastructure bill, which will make our roadways safer and help ensure families remain whole. As a result, the bill signed into law by President Biden last week included life-saving improvements, but it also included some loopholes. This reality just fortifies our resolve to ensure that the U.S. Department of Transportation, or DOT, uses the provisions as a floor and not a ceiling of what must be achieved. As we head into the holiday season, a quarter of this administration's term is in the proverbial rearview mirror. The DOT must act expeditiously. With each passing moment, people are in danger on our roads. Game-changing advances, such as impaired driving prevention technology and crash avoidance systems, such as automatic emergency braking, or AEB, as the chairwoman mentioned earlier, which reduces front-to-rear crashes by 50%, must be required in all new cars. Every family deserves to be protected from the threat of impaired driving, and every family deserves the safest braking system, not just those who can afford higher-end vehicles or luxury packages. Additionally, and I know these provisions were mentioned already, but behind each one of these provisions that I'm about to mention are multiple families with whom advocates and others have worked, so it really bears repeating them. Systems to detect and alert hot car incidents, better performing headlights, an update of the seatback standard, potential hood and bumper safety upgrades, guards to prevent underride crashes with trucks, closing limo safety gaps, and road safety infrastructure improvements must result from this landmark legislation. It's now time for the U.S. DOT to turn these decrees into directives for all truck and car manufacturers. We're at a transformational time in surface transportation history, with crash deaths reaching 40,000 people in 2020 and spiking even more this year. There's an urgency to implement proven solutions. We will all continue our work together to urge President Biden, who himself is a crash survivor, having lost his first wife and baby girl in a truck crash, to make sure that these safety improvements are brought over the finish line immediately. Thank you. I would now like to introduce the next speaker, who has endured every parent's worst nightmare, yet has the courage and strength to be here to talk about it so that other children and families may be protected. Jamie Dill is a volunteer with the organization Kids and Car Safety, which is a member of my board of directors. She is here today as a representative of the thousands of families who have suffered pediatric hot car fatalities. Jamie.
Well over 1,000 children have died in hot cars in the U.S. since 1990. My son Oliver was one of them on July 9th, 2019. This was something we never imagined could happen to our family because our love for Ollie was so strong and absolutely unconditional. Ollie and his brother were our entire world. My husband, a loving, responsible father and professor, left him in his car all day while he went to work, not having a clue that our sweet boy was in danger. We will never see Ollie go to school, graduate, get married, or have children. We will never know what he wanted to do when he grows up. Never see him play baseball the way he yearned to do while watching his big brother. If only the car had known he was there. When I found out this was possible with available technology, we began advocating with Kids and Cars Safety for detection and alert systems in all new vehicles. Systems costing less than $20 are currently available that would end these senseless tragedies by utilizing occupant detection and alert technologies. Some manufacturers already offer them. Today, Kia and Hyundai both feature detection and alert systems in select makes and models of their vehicles. It's time that all children are protected, no matter what vehicle their mommy, daddy, or caregiver is driving. On behalf of mine and other grieving families, we applaud the work of Congress for enacting a provision aimed at addressing the deadly but preventable problem of hot car deaths. We are eternally grateful for the bipartisan effort and dedication from safety champions like Representatives Jan Schakowsky and Tim Ryan, and my Representative Larry Bouchon, as well as Senator Richard Blumenthal. They are with us every step of the way with our efforts. Today, we urge the U.S. Department of Transportation to take swift action to establish effective performance standards for systems to both detect and alert if a child is alone in a vehicle, and to require this technology in all new cars. We look forward to a day very soon when we can say that children are no longer dying trapped inside hot cars. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Who's Larry Bouchon and who's the other Republican?
That's the only Republican.
That's the only, okay. Jamie, when you think of all the equipment we have in our cars, that for $20 we can have something that would detect and announce that there's someone in the back seat, child. And by the way, the Veterinary Association is always also concerned. Animals, dogs get killed and die in hot cars as well. But we could save the lives of children for $20. And yet it took all this time to get it done. And Jamie mentioned the co-sponsors is bipartisan. Tim Ryan, is it Dr. Beauchamp? Yeah. From Indiana, right? Yeah. Co-sponsors of this bill, and passed with bipartisan help. All these bills did. And finally, I want to introduce a great friend of mine. I served with him in the state legislature. He was the former president of the Illinois State Senate and the chief advocate for car safety. And actually, because of John Cullerton, as I said, the former president of the Senate, Illinois was the second state in the nation that had seatbelt requirements. So he himself has also saved helped to save millions of lives. John Cullerton, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. I am a recovering politician. It's been a couple of years since I've been in office, so it's just an honor for me to be here. And I really, really was excited to hear about this event so that I could come here and thank all of you guys. And I've had this rush of memories. Doctor, you reminded me of the expert witnesses we had when we tried to pass and did successfully pass car seat legislation, seatbelt legislation, .08. The relatives of victims of fatalities, to redirect your grief to help force legislators to pass laws so that fewer people die is just so admirable, and it's so important. So I just have to tell you how much I appreciate those efforts. MAD was there when we passed the .08 law in Illinois that I sponsored. Advocates for Highway Auto Safety were there all along as we passed those bills. But I also really wanted to come here to thank Congresswoman Schakowsky, because having been in that arena, it hasn't been pointed out, but there was actually somebody against this law, okay? And she passed this bill. And I heard about this bill months ago. I remember calling her and just congratulating her for trying and to pass this legislation. Of all the bills I passed, and I passed a lot of bills in Springfield over 41 years, the ones that involved pressing a button and knowing you were going to save lives is the most gratifying. And this one is going to save, can you imagine, 10,000 lives a year? There's nothing like this that's ever been passed in decades. So I'm really honored to be here, and I want to thank all of you. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you, John. Well, that's us. I don't know if there are questions or any additional comments, or if any of our speakers wanted to, if we missed anything, to add that. Otherwise, let me just say a great, great thank you. It's important to understand that as meaningful as what we do as members of Congress, it is equally, if not more, meaningful what happens outside of Congress. The advocates, the individuals who tell their story, it's really a team effort to make it all happen. Again, I want to thank Lurie Children's Hospital for not only hosting us, but the great care for children, including victims of auto accidents. So thank you so much.